I'm Elizabeth Nkere, and I welcome you all to my YouTube channel where we make learning French fun and interesting that you won't even realize that you're even learning at all. So on today's video, we're going to be talking about reflexive verbs and pronouns. Before we dive right into that, please, I want you to do me a favor and kindly click that like button. Thank you. Click that subscribe button. Before we move forward, I'm giving you 5 seconds to do that. Let's go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Why have you not subscribed? What is keeping you from subscribing? Anyway, like I said, we're going to be talking about reflexive verbs and reflexive pronouns. Now that you have subscribed, if you've not subscribed, it's God that will judge you. Anyway, let's dive right into that, shall we? Now, what does a reflexive verb mean? In simple terms, a reflexive verb is a verb in which its direct subject is the same as the object. That is, the subject of the sentence and the object are the same thing, like you're referring to the same thing or person or object. Do you get it now? For example, I wash my face. I brush my teeth. The subject is I. The person the action is being performed on is still I. So that is when you take note. That's where reflexive verbs and pronouns come to play. As we all know, verbs are an integral part of speaking French. You cannot speak French without knowing French verbs. You cannot know French verbs without knowing how to conjugate them. And now, reflexive verb is another branch of French verbs that are equally as important as regular verbs. Now, like I said, we're talking about reflexive verbs and pronouns. You would now wonder, where does reflexive pronoun come in this? Reflexive pronouns go hand in hand with reflexive verbs. To use reflexive verbs in French, you need to know reflexive pronouns because they're like Bonnie and Clyde. They're besties. They have to come together. So here's a chart of all the reflexive pronouns in French. Me is myself. Te is you or yourself. Ce is for he or she. It also goes with they. Nous is for we. Vous is for you. You, formal or plural. In the sense that je goes with me, so it is je me. Te goes with tu, that is tu te. Ce goes with il or elle, that is he or she. So if you're saying il or elle, if you want to use that with a reflexive verb, it will be il se or elle se. Now this se also goes with they, that is the plural of he and she. So if you're saying il with an S, which is they, or elle with an S, which is also they, you would use se. Now, I notice a lot of people get confused when you say il, like what's the difference between il and elle? Like they both mean they, so why is there masculine and feminine? In French, everything has masculine and feminine. That is one. Two, the next question most people ask me in my comments is like, how would I know if there's a group of women? Okay, I would use elle, right? A group of women, you'd use elle. Or a group of females, you use elle. A group of males, I use il. What if there's a group of male and female? What will I use? What you'd use is il. As long as there's a male in the group. As long as in that they you are referring to, there's a man, there's a boy, there's a male, you use il, even if it's just one male. I'm sorry for my feminists. I'm sorry, that's the rules. Don't hate the player, hate the game. That is basically how it is in French. So do not be confused anymore. Now back to reflexive pronouns. Ce goes for he, which is il. Ce goes for elle, which is she. Ce also goes for they, which is il or elle. Tu comprends? Next up is nous. Nous goes for us. We, nous. So if you're using nous as a reflexive pronoun, it will be nous. I'll explain, you'd understand soon enough. Stay with me. Then vous, like I said, plural is vous. Okay? Vous. This will make sense in the later part of this video, so calm down. Now here's a short list of some reflexive verbs, just a few examples I'm going to give to you to understand why like reflexive verbs are different. For example, se coucher, which means to go to bed. Now we notice whenever you say to go to bed, the object and the subject and the object is the same, because if you want to say I'm going to bed, it's still you, right? It's like you're referring to yourself, or you're referring to someone performing an action on themselves. Se brosser is another reflexive verb. Brosser means to brush, like to brush your teeth or to brush your hair. Notice how to brush is performed on a person or a subject. Basically, the subject and object is the same because you are brushing your teeth or the person is brushing their teeth. Se laver is to wash your hands, to wash yourself. Se souvenir is to remember. Remember, do you understand? Like, it is about yourself. So notice what all these verbs have in common is they are referring to actions being performed on oneself. To brush your teeth, you perform the action on yourself. To go to bed, you perform the action on yourself. To remember is an action you do with your body, with your brain, by yourself. So when you think about French reflexive verbs, think of verbs that describe actions being done to oneself. So that grammar that I said, the subject and the object is the same. Just think of it as an action, a verb that describes actions being done to oneself. Does that make sense? Now, the list goes on and on. I cannot start mentioning so many reflexive verbs. You can Google them on your own. I'm going to list a few on the screen. You can pause or take a screenshot. I'm going to put some reflexive verbs on the screen. Now, we're going to pick a few of them, or maybe just one, to conjugate, so you get a glimpse of how they come together, how the reflexive pronoun and the reflexive verb comes together. Now let's take one example. Let's conjugate one reflexive verb using lever as an example, which means to get up. Je me lève. Je me lève means I get up. That me right there is indicating that it is me that is getting up. Okay? Je me lève. Tu te lèves. Tu te lèves is you get up. You. The action is being performed on you. That is why that te is there. Il se lève. He gets up. That is why se is there. It has to be there. Elle se lève is she gets up. She gets up. So use se. Nous nous lèvons. Nous nous lèvons means we get up. We get up. The action is being performed on we. Vous vous levez. It is you get up. It's like saying you get up, or you get up yourself. You get up. Remember, vous is also you, but a plural or formal version of you. Okay? Then il se lève. Il se lève, which means they get up. Elle se lève, which means they get up. It is also they. So it's il or elle se lève, which means they get up. Now you see how they come in hand. Point to note. This is very, very important. Number one, step one, you need to know how to conjugate French verbs. You need to know how to conjugate French verbs. If you do not know how to conjugate French verbs, I have a video on it. Check my page, or I'll put a link in the description. Click on it, watch it, and learn how to conjugate simple French verbs. This will help you a lot. It will make a whole lot of this work 98% easier. Secondly, when using reflexive verbs, you have to conjugate the verb. You cannot leave the verb in its infinitive form. So when you say je me lève, that laver, you know the verb in its infinitive form is lever. So you cannot say je me lève. No, it's incorrect. You have to conjugate the verb to match the subject, which is je or tu or nous. That is why I said nous nous levons. Okay, so I hope you understand that. But if you want to make a sentence like you get up too fast, it's going to be tu te lèves trop vite. Like I said, reflexive pronouns can be used in several other ways besides stalking reflexive verbs. Yes, stalking them, because that's what they do. That's what I explained. Reflexive pronouns can be used to point fingers. Yes, to point fingers at people. Basically, to indicate who you're referring to or who an action is being performed on. For example, if I want to say, I'm talking to you, that would be je te parle. Je te parle. I'm talking to you. If I just say je parle, it means I'm talking. There's no fingers. I don't know nobody knows who I'm talking to. But when I say je te parle, it means I'm talking to you. That te has now indicated who I'm talking to you. Okay? If I say je vous parle, it also means I'm talking to you, but this time around, maybe I'm talking to an older person or I'm talking to a crowd of people. Do you understand? I would use vous. Now, if I want to say, I'm talking to us, je nous parle, even if there's probably nothing like that. But basically, you get the picture I'm trying to paint. Now, in essence, a reflexive pronoun can actually work with another verb that is not a reflexive verb. Like I just gave an example. Parler is not a reflexive verb. But if I can actually use a reflexive pronoun to form a sentence with it. Do you get the picture? Okay. Point number 3, a reflexive verb can give a regular verb a new meaning, thereby transforming a regular verb to a reflexive one. Let me explain. For example, the verb appeler on its own means to call, like to call someone or to put a call through to someone, or basically appel is just to call. Now let's see what a reflexive verb can transform this simple verb to. For example, when you say t'appelle, t'appelle is simply te plus appel. You know, in French, because of that te ended with an e, you cannot say te appelle. You don't do that in French. The vowel from te has to go, so it will become t'appelle. Now, like I said, when you add a reflexive pronoun, t'appelle, it becomes t'appelle, using te as example. It now becomes call yourself. It's no longer to call. It means call yourself. This would make sense when I remind you of the popular sentence, comment tu t'appelles? You know, a lot of you non-French speakers, you always say, comment tu t'appelles? Comment tu t'appelles? Comment tu t'appelles? Let's translate it literally. Comment is how. Comment in this sentence can mean what. Tu is you. Remember, tu is you. What reflexive pronoun goes with tu is te, right? Hope you remember, the reflexive pronoun that goes with tu is te. Te. So you say, comment tu te? What's next? Appelle, t'appelle. Te plus appelle becomes t'appelle. So this sentence will now mean, what do you call yourself? Am I making sense? Because of the presence of the reflexive pronoun, that appelle no longer becomes to call, like to make a call or to call someone. It now becomes like you're referring to somebody. It becomes reflexive. You're pointing fingers. Remember I said reflexive pronouns can help you point fingers. You're now pointing fingers at a person, thereby changing the meaning of a regular verb. So, comment tu t'appelles? Because of the presence of that reflexive pronoun, te appelle, t'appelle now means call yourself. That is, comment tu t'appelles is what do you call yourself? That is the literal translation of comment tu t'appelles. But when you want to translate it in the general way, it means what is your name? You see what that reflexive pronoun did. Then when you respond with je m'appelle, that is another reflexive pronoun coming to play. Je, what reflexive pronoun goes with je? Me. If you forgot, go back and watch this video again. What reflexive pronoun goes with je? Me. So the person says je me, je m'appelle. Me plus appelle is m'appelle. Remember what I did with te. Because of the presence of the vowel after me, which is e, the e has to go and has to be replaced with an apostrophe. So it becomes je m'appelle. Je m'appelle means I call myself. That me means myself, me. Je, I call myself because of appelle and me. So it becomes je m'appelle, I call myself. That is the response to comment tu t'appelles. But if you want to give it a general translation, which is what we all know, it would be my name is. Your name is basically what you call yourself. Do you understand? Like, do you see the magic of reflexive pronouns? See how that reflexive pronoun has transformed a regular, lonely, hungry verb and made it reflexive. It changed its life. It gave it a new life, a new meaning, transformed it. That is the power. That, my friend, is the power of a reflexive pronoun in French. Remember I said reflexive pronouns point fingers. Still using this appeler to take an example, you can use reflexive pronoun to point fingers, to direct, to let us know who you're performing the action on. If you make a sentence like ils appellent, they are calling. Who are they calling? Nobody knows. Ils appellent. Ils, they, appellent, call. Who are they calling? It's a very best sentence. But now when a reflexive pronoun comes in, let's use nous, for example. If you say il nous appelle, it now becomes they are calling us. That nous serves as us, we. It will now become they are calling us. So you see what a reflexive pronoun can do. It not only transforms the meaning of a sentence. It can actually retain the meaning of the sentence, but help you point fingers. It can help you determine who a sentence is being referred to. This is how powerful a reflexive pronoun is. It gives so much meaning to a sentence. This is why you need to understand it. You need to know how to use it. In summary, here are a few points to note about reflexive pronouns. Number 1, reflexive pronouns go hand in hand with reflexive verbs. You cannot use a reflexive verb without a reflexive pronoun. No, you cannot. They are like Bonnie and Clyde. They are best friends. They are brother and sister. They are husband and wife. They have two words go together. Number 2, a reflexive verb can be used to point fingers in the sense that it can be used to point out who a sentence or an action is being performed on, or who a sentence is referred to. As seen in when I said, je te parle. I pointed out who I'm referring to using a reflexive pronoun. 3, a reflexive pronoun can give a regular verb a new meaning. As seen in the example I gave with appeler. When I said comment tu t'appelles, because of the presence of the reflexive pronoun, it changed it from merely being to call to someone's name. So a reflexive pronoun can transform a regular verb to a reflexive verb, thereby giving it a new meaning. Number 4, in the same vein of reflexive pronoun being used to point fingers, it can be interswitched. It doesn't necessarily have to be je me, tu te. Seeing the example I gave before, I said il nous appelle. They are calling us. Okay, it can be interchanged. Reflexive pronoun can be used depending on who you want to point fingers at. You don't necessarily have to say je me. If you're not referring to yourself, that's when you're using regular verbs. If you're not referring to yourself, you can say je vous, je te. Okay, it depends on who you're referring to. So it helps you point fingers in that sense. Okay, now what you should learn from this particular use of reflexive verb is that when you're interchanging it like that, when you're using it to point fingers, number one, you need to know how to conjugate verbs. That is a key thing. I mentioned it before. Number two, when conjugating it to match the sentence, note that the verb in question has to be conjugated to match the subject and not the object. So if I say il nous appelle, the verb appelle or appeler, the verb appeler will be conjugated to match the subject, which is il. That is why I conjugated it as L-E-N-T, because that is the conjugated version of il. If I say je t'appelle, the appeler will be conjugated to match je. Do you understand? It must be conjugated to match the subject and not the reflexive pronoun. So do not get confused when you say something like il. If you say something like il nous, do not conjugate it to match the nous, which is the reflexive pronoun. You have to conjugate it to match the subject, which is il. So no matter how you place it, just know that however you conjugate it, it should match the what? The subject of the sentence. That is very important. Do not say ils nous appellent. No. You say il nous appelle. Do not match it. Do not conjugate it to match nous. Do you get it now? Very good. That being said, reflexive pronouns are very important. They are an integral part of French speaking and French learning. Okay, they are very, very important. I cannot overemphasize the importance of reflexive verbs. Study them, practice them, memorize them, and you are good. You are good to what? You are good to go. Okay? So note that this video was made based on popular demands. On my IG story, I did a poll for people to vote. Do you want a long video? So if you want to keep up with my content, if you want to let me know what else you want me to talk about, make sure to follow me on Instagram. You can either comment here or you follow me on Instagram and TikTok. These are my handles. Instagram, very important because that's where I do my polls and ask questions on my story. So make sure to like this video, comment, subscribe to this channel. For those of you Olofofo that decided not to subscribe to this point, please, I beg you in the name of God, subscribe to this channel for more premium content like this. Make sure to follow my socials, my Instagram, my TikTok, and this is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. À bientôt. Mwah.